pull up my script.
What a trip.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So for those of you joining us, welcome to the TMFA Community Office Hours. Once a week, we gather to discuss projects, introduce leaders in their fields, and support each other. Earlier this year, a small group of artists started creating workshops, sharing resources, and building tools for a community that is now 200 plus artists and creatives all over the world. We're pleased to welcome Douglas, aka Hoxxoh, to the stage today. It'd be hugely helpful if you have a good time during this conversation. Maybe you capture something on Instagram and share it and tag Hoxxoh and tag TMFA community, because we're trying to grow this audience to be able to support the speakers that generously donate their time to us. We have a brief presentation. It's a slide deck. We're having slight technical difficulties with playing the video right now, but we've got Lewis helping us sort that out. Maybe while we're waiting for the conversation or the deck to get ready, Hoxxoh, you could introduce yourself and talk through kind of your background and where you come from.
Oh, look, is that working now? Is everybody seeing that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so good morning, at least for me. So a little bit of my background. I've been painting since 1995. I started out in high school. Went into college studying the arts. I got a degree in painting and art history. And then I got the idea of becoming an architect. And I studied, I did a 5-year architecture program in 4 years. I graduated in 2008, and that's when the market, the bubble popped, and the entire industry of architecture was non-existent. I found myself overqualified for every job, and worked in a lumber mill for a year. During that time, I kind of just refocused on painting, and that's around when I discovered this mark from the spray can. Now it's backwards. Who's on?
Louis
on it. All right. So we're gonna get this. Bear with us. I just started really focusing on what I can do with a can of paint. Around that time, I was lucky enough to help El Mac and Retina paint their second mural in Miami. And watching El Mac paint really just made a big connection for me. His, the way he works is entirely technique based. And, it's a bit of motivation and inspiration to figure out my mark. And I discovered this U-shape mark that the can of spray paint does. Basically the paint comes out like a cone, and I'm utilizing half the cone. Louis got it. So here's a pretty good video. And it's loading. The load's weird.
It's working all right.
Okay. So as you can see, it's just super repetitive, same mark over and over and over and over. Just subtle little nuances and variations. The beginning of using that mark was just super chaos. And then over the time, I contained it within a circle. And then I did concentric rings, which everybody thought I was doing mandalas, but they are mandalas. That's not why I was painting. It's the how is why I was painting, which led into off-centered circles. And now you have these vortexes that everybody, or portals that everybody seems to be seeing a lot of my work or know that about my work. Where's the slow-mo, Louis? Whatever. This thing.
We'll keep it moving. It's good.
So then, which after the spray paint, it just led into kind of investigating other ways I can arrange the cans. Louis, if you can go to the slide. Yeah, so here's where there's 3 cans being held, and I was interested in seeing if the 3 cones of paint would blend. So like I was calling it the RGB gun. And then when it would spray, you get the CMYK, and it worked. You were actually, it was very subtle, but it was a really cool experiment to study. And here's a friend of, you could see in the video, I think it was playing, but he was catching a tag with it. I've made four of these different spray paint mechanisms. They're all amazing failures. I didn't realize I was more interested in making sculptures. So this is the ultimate sculpture failure. I wanted to make a handheld gun for each letter in the alphabet. So it would hold the cans in the position to spray an A with pulling one trigger and dots. I couldn't afford the shop. My fabricator, I just give him, he's amazing. I just give him really bad drawings and a loose concept. And, I couldn't afford 20 some odd guns. So we tried to make one gun that can make every letter in the alphabet. And I ended up calling this the Typewriter Gun. We even used parts from typewriters in it. Louis, can you play the next one? It kind of worked. It kind of more ended up being like this weird bad pixel paintings. Like you can make a really weird happy face or like it's just one of those things that leaving room for failure really opens up so many different opportunities, and kind of just really is a big part of my work. I think some people call it experimentation, but it's just allowing yourself to fail constantly, and then all of a sudden you'll make a discovery, or you'll see something you didn't expect, and then zone in on that. And that's been a big key of my work, is like finding a little nuance. Sometimes it's like paint that fell on the floor in the studio and trying to figure out how to recreate that, which leads into the next mechanism, which is the pendulum. I started doing this, about 10 years ago. I started working with a paint pendulum, and it's essentially just a Evian 1 liter bottle. For some reason, I really like that one bottle. You could use any vessel, and it's tied on a rope, fixed to a point on the ceiling, hole in the bottom, and a hole on the top for the release. And early on with the pendulum, I realized, I worked with it for about a year, just discovering what kind of patterns it can make. Basically, you have a spiral or a parabolic curve. You can get into tying different knots, and it could do these like a trapezoid pattern, but I focused on the spiral and the parabolic. I worked with that for a few years, and then finally Googled and Wikipedia pendulum, and learned that Galileo and Newton were using the pendulum, or trying to use the pendulum for a clock, but they realized due to air friction, it's not an accurate clock. But it really made a connection for me that, and having a body of work that's based on a concept such as time, I created a whole body of work where it was measuring time. I would paint on 60 small circles, and then I would allow the pendulum to paint for 1 minute on each circle, and then you'd have 60 of them, so it would be this hour. And it was just like a new or a different way to visually see an hour, or like what an hour is, and like even the idea of time, like being from Miami, like time is viewed very differently than it is in a lot of other parts in the States and the world. And it, just in general, like my time and your time, everybody gauges time differently. And I think I'm dragging on too much on that, but
No, you're
which led into more experimenting with the pendulum, and I got into doing some clothes. It was something I did a few years ago, and this year I did I don't know how to play these. Here's a demonstration I did for a bunch of kids. Louis, are you running this?
Yes, Louis running it.
Man, his videos are not playing. So here's just a performance piece I did at a kids museum here in Fort Lauderdale. I really wish you could hear the sound. The kids sounded like they're on a roller coaster ride. So I continued to experiment with this body work, and it was kind of like the next step was scaling it up. And I was curious to whether or not if it reacted the same with a 5 gallon of paint as it does with a 1 liter. And it does. It reacts exactly the same. I have plans to, I'd like to really do this with soil and seeds, like sunflower seeds or corn seeds, do it in a big field and have like a spiral maze that would grow. But again, it just taking these, or investigating these mechanisms and seeing what kind of different marks and patterns they can do, and then developing upon that, sometimes introducing the 2 different techniques in my studio, which is, man, this video, it's really weird to watch this video right now.
Hey Hawks, it's good from the
okay. Sorry.
I'm getting the idea, and you're speaking really eloquently about it. So don't stress out about the video. We can
Appreciate it.
We can superimpose like higher quality videos. We're just working with like the technology we have available to us right now.
That's all we can do. Is
Yeah, you're doing great though. This is
thank
I'm
you.
speaking for the whole crew of 51 people in here, but this is awesome.
Great. So maybe we move to the next video. So the next body of mechanisms are these, kind of calling them ready-mades, because they're already made. They're either an industrial, it started with an industrial spray gun, but then it really led into lawn watering devices or irrigation systems, also known as sprinklers. Here's where I just used an airless, classic industrial airless paint gun they use for big houses. We got a wagon and a generator. We did this in one day. It was a long one day, but this was actually the second time I painted the stadium. One day in an airless, and then a giant string or rope that we just tied to one point and used it as a compass to lay out the map, and use the seats also to kind of grid it out a little bit. You can keep moving, Louis, please. So then there's the wagon set up. My truck early on, I was a big part of Primary Flight, which was the beginning of the murals here in Wynwood in Miami. I was the guy buffing all the walls and helping all the artists for 2 or 3 years. And my truck was the ultimate buffmobile. We had 2 airless guns and a generator, and man, I think we went through like 150 gallons of paint in 2 days. And little did I know it was leading into painting a stadium with a miniature version on the wagon. So if we can go to the next slide. So this led into, I called it the Rainbird because that's the brand. I believe it's a German sprinkler. And the mechanism itself is really beautifully designed. It allows you to change the radius and the pitch, and you can change a flap that cause different sprays. The video on the left, that's Axel Voigt's house, actually. It was his first Voigt's projects that he started. And he let me paint his house. It shot over the house and painted all the trees by accident, but luckily a garden hose, you can clean the trees real fast, and we didn't harm any plants. The video on the right, Super Chief invited me, pushing it across, invited me to do an install up in Ohio a few years ago, where it was kind of the first time working with it in an interior space. And it was like a really weird office hallway that just let loose, man. And it ended up just kind of was like, that was the first of the irrigation devices. And then I, going, here we go. So it's a trip when, like, you start going to get art supplies at, your local art store, and then Home Depot's gardening section is the best art supply. The garden section, a little bit of the plumbing, and I don't know if the rest of the world has Harbor Freight, but Harbor Freight is a store here in the States that's just, it's my favorite store. You can get every tool at a ridiculously cheap price. And that's where I started making these backpacks, where the first one is on the top, and it's actually a tank it's a pressure tank from an airplane that it's the tank that inflates the slide to evacuate the plane. So it can hold something like 5,000 PSI. I'm not using that. It's only like 120 PSI to pump the paint out, but I would like to see what 5,000 PSI does, but at the same time, it would be quite nervous having that strapped to your back. And then it led to discovering the sandblasting tanks at Harbor Freight. Kind of had almost everything you need, and then you would just need a couple of the plumbing parts, and then your gardening tool of choice, or water gardening tool of choice. The one I really fell in love with is the one that kind of sways back and forth, and it has, I think, 18 or 15 different little holes in it. And that's kind of what you're seeing on this video. Really have some plans I'm hoping to finally get into in 2021, where I could do these, like a full room, indoor and outdoor. There's multiple sprinkler heads going off at once. Definitely have comfort and inspiration from Catherine Grosse and her giant spray installations. She really, like, gave me comfort in pushing forward on these crazy ideas. Hopefully I can keep on pushing these. A small problem with running these irrigation systems is the paint budget. You can burn through 5 gallons of paint in under 2 minutes. So you don't need to cut it with water, but it just, you can have more fun for longer if you cut it a little. I found out the hard way. I don't know how much more we have in the video here, but
looks like we got about 5 slides left.
All right. This was installation for Red Bull I did last Basel, and I think, yeah, here's a little video shot. This is installing last year's Basel for Super Chief and Mana. Just really, it's wild even looking at these, like, it's such early stages, and it's really exciting. Like, these are one-day projects, and you know, only you can only plan so much, and these tools are quite chaotic. There's limited control, but it keeps it exciting. Really kind of just really shows this place I found myself in this trying to control this. It's not even this, like, I'm not trying to control chaos. It's more just embracing chaos. And like, there's this funny line that it's really not chaotic. There's total order in chaos. Maybe just trying to it's kind of like this dance. It's like, sometimes things work out really great. Here's a perfect example of, I really like the photo on the left. I should have stopped the first 10 minutes into the project. I don't know, just getting comfortable in that moment where it's about to be chaotic, and somehow you think you have control over it, and you have absolutely no control. It's a lot like 2020.
It's also a lot like Zoom.
Yeah, being reactionary, you know, like just kind of being on your toes and getting comfortable with that. I've learned the more and more you do things, the more and more there's this muscle memory that just intuitively happens. I had no idea I'd be falling into this realm or finding myself in this place of like, I don't know, I'm just thinking like what ballerinas go through, the amount of torture and training that they go through, or like gymnasts. I can't believe I'm making a comparison to what they go through, but you know, and hopefully the outcome is something beautiful. It's kind of always what you strive for, at least, you know, like some people might look at it as a giant mess, which it is, but I think messes can be really beautiful. I think, you know, that there's this moments of abstract expressionism, and it allows for multiple narratives. I never really try to give any kind of title or any kind of narrative to my work. I really enjoy hearing what the audience, or when I'm in the public realm painting on the streets, I really love hearing how people react to my work. It's really an honor when it's just, you know, somebody from 10 years old or an 80-year-old person is just vibing with it. People that would never expect, especially on this install. I had the whole construction crew, you know, that they really know nothing about art, have no interaction with the art world. And, you know, I'm using some of the tools that they use every day. And, you know, with the sprinkler, you know, at least for me growing up in Florida, I have memories running through sprinklers as a kid. And I know a lot of other people have that experience. Once you hear that sound of a sprinkler, there's this nostalgia that happens. And it was really cool to experience that on this project, surrounded by a bunch of gnarly construction dudes, and they all had smiles on their face like little kids, and really enjoyed the mess. And it was great to tighten it up with those white arcs, which were free-handed, and I think it was like 4 hours to clean the mess up. For some reason, a lot of times, especially with the sprinkler, I feel like that Dr. Seuss book when the kids painted everything pink, or everything just got destroyed by pink. I really found to enjoy that spot, and feel very grateful to be able to enter that realm. Yeah, I think that might be it for the slides. I don't know.
Is there one more slide, Lewis?
I think it might just be my mug shot.
Lewis, do you mind stopping sharing your screen? And Hoxxoh, thank you so much for the thoughtful presentation. It was like really enlightening to see your work progress over time. It really kind of paints a picture of like just determination and experimentation leading to magic. And for me, that's like the essence of art. We're now at 30 minutes. I was hoping that we could do a Q&A if you still have a few minutes.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Totally.
So I think the way to do this to make it orderly is type your question into the chat box. I'm going to read the question out loud and then invite you. Well, I'm gonna basically invite you up to speak based on your questions, so we can do some filtering here. So if you have a question, go ahead and enter it. But also, I know we're all on mute, but maybe we could give Hoxxoh a round of applause because that was awesome.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Way better than Instagram Live because we had the opportunity for 50 people to view a full presentation of your work. And it's really nice to have that context.
It's really wild to see everybody.
Yeah, we've got 2 full screens of people. So if you have a question, type it into the chat, please. So Jason Huffer has asked a question. Jason, you want to come up and unmute yourself?
Hey, Hoxxoh, how's it going?
Good, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the question that I have is, what type of controls do you implement to find that balance of chaos and organization? So on that last piece, you had those white lines and arches that kind of brought everything together, but you had these beautiful colors that work together, and that, you can tell that it's not just chaos. There's definitely some planning that goes behind that. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the control in chaos.
Totally, great question. On that piece, it happens on all my murals. I react to the architecture, and on that building, it had those vertical lines were actually the expansion joints. That was a tilt-up construction parking garage wall. So I knew I could divide the composition according to those expansion joints. That was the first time doing that project. So I made a Photoshop of just giant circles repeated on the wall on one slide to explain, kind of give them a heads up, like how it's going to be delivered on the wall. And then that I could put some order on the composition and put these like barrel vault, like implied barrel vault Roman arches, so to speak, which they really gave them comfort and giving me permission on, rainbirding their building. With my murals, like with the spray paint, like I said early on, like I try to set certain restraints to allow chaos to happen. With the spray paint, I would just have a large circle and paint within it, and then I did concentric rings, and then that's kind of what it's led into in my work. So it's just setting up loose parameters, like that you hope to catch the chaos and put some order on it, if that makes any sense.
Awesome. Thanks for the question, Jason. We have a question from Stefan out in Berlin related to the business side of things. Stefan, you want to ask your question?
Yo, hi, Marty. Nice to see you again. Thanks for organizing this. And Douglas, thanks a lot. That was very insightful. I just curious about, you said that you were doing these projects for like these big projects. I just wanted to know a little bit, how do these projects come to fruition? Do you reach out to them? It's like, hey, I just saw you have a huge facade, want to paint them. They're like, oh, this is the guy we need for this. Are these connections with galleries, or how do these projects come to do? Because, you could also just go and paint them, without asking permission, but
yeah. Well, yeah, in the beginning, it was a little bit of, permission and no permission, just going out and doing it. Over the years, it's Instagram was a social media, and mainly Instagram was a great way for, clients, for lack of better words, to contact me. That one with the arch, I guess kind of the answer to the business side was they wanted the spray paint mural. They wanted like a big vortex, but they didn't have the budget to be able to do it. Enough budget to run the Rainbird. I wish there was a formula to finding work. There's honestly no rhyme or reason to it. I am, now that I've been able to convince enough people to let me do it, I have goals to go after some projects that are more project spaces that are ran. We have, in Miami, we have a place called Locust Projects. They have the Andy Warhol grant, and they have an open all year. You can go to Locust, get their floor plan, and you can send a proposal in. And they can allocate funds for you to be able to experiment on crazy projects or just dream projects that you have.
Sean,
yeah,
Sean has a question kind of along the same lines: is how do you make money? Do you sell smaller works or only do installations? How do you decide on the pricing of each work?
How much do you have in your pocket? Yeah. So how do I make money? Struggling. I still don't know how I do this. I've been really lucky that I've been able to land a really good mural commission for either, a city public art fund, or I've been very fortunate to have a few collectors that have invested in my work here and there. But again, I wish there was a formula. I just started to do prints. I'm learning. The past 10 years, I was always like a quick no to doing prints. And now I'm learning to embrace that. Part of that was just, I wanted to have more of my work accessible. My smaller works, the price point usually starts around 500 and goes up. And what prints just opened up a whole new world for me. I hope to utilize that to be able to fund some of these bigger projects I want to do. But mainly it's been trying to work with organizations, or somehow taking a commercial project and twisting it so it's leaning towards more something I want to do. Man, I wish I could answer that for you. That's like the golden question, man. Like, how do you make money in the art world? I have no idea how people are doing it.
That's kind of what we're building this.
I wish I did more moniker cartoon shit, but that's a low blow.
That's kind of what we're building this community around, trying to figure out how each of us make money. Hey, Anastasia, I'm gonna have to mute you. You're talking to someone. Anyway,
yeah.
So Jerry, you got a quick question, and then we'll go to David Grossman. I think these two questions kind of flow into each other, related to your progress and your process.
Yeah, thank you for your time. I was just curious about how it felt going from helping LMAC paint a mural to the timeline, and then actually painting a mural in collaboration, and how that felt, and I don't know what you've learned from him.
Really emotional. I helped Mac. I met him then, and then over the years, we stayed in touch. And then when he did a huge mural in 2019 in Miami that he spent 9 months doing, we just finally had a minute to really, you know, nurture our friendship. And yeah, it kind of it was one of those moments like, hey, you know, I got this it was a little bit of, I didn't want to do Mural Fest, and then I got invited by Colorado Crush to do this Mural Fest, and I was brainstorming with them that, you know, it's always been a dream to paint with Mac, the artist that had a massive, like, I wouldn't paint the way I do with spray paint if it wasn't for this guy. So it was extremely surreal to collaborate with him. Mac, if you ever have the opportunity to meet the guy, he's honestly one of the nicest dudes you'll ever meet. And you meet him, you feel like you've known him for years. But even with that, it was quite nerve-wracking. My friend Marca told me, he's from Mexico. He told me, "No le jodes," which meant don't fuck it up. On that mural, I was supposed to paint first, and then he was supposed to paint, which would have been really easy. And it got flipped due to his scheduling. He had to paint first, and we were only supposed to do one wall, and then it led to doing two walls. That wall was a battle. So I had, and my paint didn't show up. I had a 250 can order and 24 colors that didn't show up. So I had to run around Denver, find what paint I could find in the middle of a mural festival, and everybody's buying paint from everywhere. It was nerve-wracking, man. I hadn't had those kind of nerves in a long time, and I was doing a pattern I hadn't done before. The projector didn't work, so I had to freehand a sketch that I've never sketched before. It was great to like be on a project that every problem I could have, you know, found me, which happens a lot on murals. People don't really realize the amount of fighting you go through. A big part's with weather and the sun, man. That was a south facing wall. It was 100 degrees. Like my paint, if it was in the sun, I had to keep it on ice, which made me feel like El Mac, because he keeps his can on ice always. I don't know, it's very, very surreal and surreal. It's hard to explain. It's like being on mushrooms minus the mushrooms. Yeah. It's like, you know, dreams do come true, I guess, kind of thing.
Hey, Hawks, we've got some questions related to kind of how to put together these proposals. So if you wouldn't mind, could we have Lewis join us in dialogue? So Lewis, and I might mess this up. He's like the manager of Hoxxoh. Is that right?
Yeah, he's a project manager, right-hand man.
And so he put together this deck for us to go through today, and he kind of guided it through because neither Hoxxoh nor I could figure out the technology side of things. But Gino asks, like, can you give us an idea of what's in a proposal deck? Is it old work? An idea of what it might look like, the rendering of the wall, a color scheme? How do you go about?
Give me 1 second. I gotta plug in this power.
Okay.
Well, if you're happy to, I can really quickly show you one. They're only like a few pages.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Give me 2 seconds. So I myself kind of have a format for each of these decks. If I bring up one we did recently, I suppose I'll do the one for. So I'll do one for that is actually for a building unit. Okay, let's do Swanee. Let's do that one. So this was one that we've done recently, and we should hear back by the end of the month on whether we got the project or not. Another thing to highlight is that when we do these proposals, when you do proposals, you can get a little bit of time because you put so many together and you put so much work into each of them in terms of the design and the content that needs to be, because you tailor it to each client or each project. So you have to use like site-specific work.
Each one, it's every wall, every project's different.
Yeah, and then obviously 50% of them you get and 50% of them you don't. So you end up putting a lot of work into something that, can be just rejected. So this is one we did recently for Suwannee.
Rejected.
So I always start with like a kind of title page. I kind of use the color scheme or maybe of the brand or the project or the building or the agency or the council that we're doing the work for. I always like to kind of start off with a quote, kind of really kind of romanticize the artists themselves and who they are about, kind of something that encompasses them within one quote, just so the person who's reading the audience is like immediately drawn into the story or the narrative. And I think that's key into putting a proposal together, is you really want someone to buy into the narrative of the story behind the artist. And then I kind of outline what is in the proposal. And then always try and hit the objectives. So you try and look at like, what's the brand that you're proposing to the agency again, like all those key funders or people that are going to be sponsoring or funding the project. What is their objectives? What are they going to be getting out of this? So a lot of them are kind of like overarching, like embracing community activity and engagement, especially when you're doing something in public art and it's publicly funded. Kind of like another thing I like to do is like really research the client or the brand that you're doing the work for and understand their story and who are they about, because then at the end of the day you're acting as an extension of them because they're funding you. So it's important that there's like this synergy between you and the project funders. Then there's always like a bio. I like to put together a bio again, just like highlighting again the narrative and the story of the artist that's involved, and kind of look at like the stats of where they're hitting, because a lot of brands, a lot of project agencies are looking at like what's the reach that it can get these days. So this one particularly wanted his Hoxx's CV, so had an outline of the gallery work that he's done and the galleries that he's been represented by. And then they wanted like previous work. So then we try to look at the big, best and boldest work that we've done. And also with this one, especially to highlight how much of a global artist Hoxx was in all the different areas and countries and towns and cities that he's painted in. So this kind of just flows for all the different projects. Then we kind of get into their design proposals. So they may send us an image, then we try and obviously like work with what they've given us in the area that they've given us and put together a few different designs and the kind of the method or the medium that it will go through. And then it's the themes and messaging, like what do these represent? What does the image represent? And again, there's a lot of like overarching, like evoke positivity, attention to the building, you know, a sense of belonging, placemaking, like all these kind of like key, and it's funny because they are just buzzwords, but it's having that understanding with the client or the project manager that you do understand that these things, these key themes and messaging are important. And then you kind of have like a breakdown of the costs of the proposal. And then, yeah, it just finishes like that. So, I mean, like, that's the kind of general like template, as it were, for proposals. But as I say, we do, it's 50-50 whether you get them, and it can be disheartening to put the work in. But I think it's important to every time, no matter how out of your reach it may be, to keep putting 100% effort into those proposals. Because then once you get into a flow of doing that template for yourself, you work out a flow and they end up becoming easier and easier and easier.
Yeah, they get easier.
Yeah.
Also,
sure.
Sometimes I found it helps to at least offer, so either they have a budget and most of the times they don't have a budget. They have no idea what the costs are. And I found it helps to at least offer 2 proposals or 3, or like a weird car analogy, like give them a Honda, a Cadillac, and then a Mercedes. where you can give them the options to build on it. But it's always project by project, man.
Yeah, and as I say, the key thing that I've always learned, because I've been doing this for 10 years now with various different artists, and the key thing is really honing on the narrative and how your artwork, you as an artist, you as a person, has the synergy with the client or the project manager or the brand or the agency. Like how do they interlink, and why would that story then be relative to the project itself? And I think if you really hone in on what the narrative is, then you're 90% there. The rest will flow.
That was super helpful. We're getting close to time. One last question we like to ask, and I guess since you're the first like guest lecturer, you're going to be the first to ask this. But coincidentally, Faceless also asked this. The guy in the mask.
I like the mask.
Goes by Faceless. Coincidentally, what is your dream project? Is question one, and then you've got 50 folks on here who are creative people all over the world. What can we do for you to help you achieve your dreams?
Oh, wow. It's like, I keep thinking of the helicopter project. Damn, dream project. I mean, scaling up the Rainbird. I really have this idea in my head of this giant interior space that has all these different kind of sprinklers, and it's interactive. You know, the viewers would enter a paint suit. Due to Rona, I started thinking hazmat suit, where people could go in and enter this space, and then you're getting painted on. Maybe you're against the wall and you're acting as a stencil. It's like just setting up a situation, and I'm excited to see how people interact with it. And I have, man, my dream project. I really want to scale up the Pendulum. I want to do a helicopter and a 55-gallon drum. It's a dream I have. What other crazy ideas? I want to rig a giant semi truck with irrigation systems and paint a highway. Maybe a couple semi trucks. I don't know. I think I got a couple other weird ones up my sleeve, but those are, I'm not sure, man. Just to be able to keep on creating and making work is really all I really care to do.
Well, we're going to work on getting you a helicopter and a couple semis. Let me tell you.
That'd be awesome.
And then finally, like, what can we do for you? Where can we find you? How can we support you?
So I have a show in Paris that's been delayed 4 or 5 times now. I think it's going to be in January coming up. I hope to have a online shop set up beginning of this year where I'll be offering the hoodies that I do and the jumpsuits with the Pendulum, and I'm going to have a couple open-ended affordable prints on there. That's always a great way to mutually support and enjoy my work. I don't really know, man. I don't have, it's funny, like future plans, like how do you even say, like you just say, I hope next year I'll be able to do these things at some point. I don't know what else to say.
Well, if this community knows anything, thoughts become things. So think it and it will be.
Yeah, manifest.
I'd like to thank you again for coming on. We've recorded this conversation, and with your permission, we'd like to share it on YouTube for everyone else that wasn't able to visit to check it out. And you were far more articulate, and the videos spoke to your work than I think you gave yourself credit for. But it was really a pleasure to have you on here. And maybe at the end of these, we usually all do like a hand signal. Like, when we did the monolith thing, we all did this. So if you have something you want us all to do, we could take a screenshot of it and it could go to represent kind of this experience.
Oh my God.
Okay, so everyone like this. Hold on, hold it. Got it. Okay. Rad.
Oh, that's great.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor. Appreciate it.
Right on. Well, we'll see you on the internet, and welcome to the community.
Thank you. See you guys soon.
Bye, everybody.
Peace.